Welcome. Oh, hang on. Not yet. Can I ask a favour from all our listeners? B Squared, the company behind the Zencast, are up for an Education Today award for Best Supplier of ICT Software for our connecting steps. If you are listening to this episode before the 30th of September, can you please vote for us in the Education Today Awards by going to educationtodayawards.co.uk/vote. You'll also find the link in the show notes. Please vote for us. And I will now hand over to me to get on with the podcast. Welcome to the Zencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the Managing Director of B Squared and the host of the Zencast, a podcast for special educational needs and disabilities. Each week we'll be talking about a different topic within the world of SEND to improve our knowledge, to provide support to professionals working in schools, and to empower parents. In this episode, we are reconstructing the student's brain using a person-centered approach to learning. And my guest this week is Dr. Susie Nyman. Susie is a regular on the podcast and is the curriculum manager at the Sixth Form College in Farnborough. And Susie is a master of multi-sensory teaching and spends lots of time sharing her knowledge and experience. The Zencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared, as well as our assessment products and our evidence and parental engagement platform. We also run online training sessions that we call Zencast sessions. And if you go to the Zencast website, you'll see there's a range of over 100 online training sessions for you to access. These sessions often feature our amazing podcast guests, but are more formal with slides that you can download. We run 9 live sessions each year, which you can join in and be part of the Q&A at the end. And we run another 9 sessions that you can buy and access later. We also run free SEND briefings twice a year, so you can keep up to date with the changes in the world of SEND. You can find out more about our training sessions and our free SEND briefings by going to the Zencast website. Now, let's get on with the podcast. In this week's show, we're discussing reconstructing the student's brain using the person-centered approach to learning. My guest is Dr. Susie Nyman, the curriculum manager at the Sixth Form College of Farnborough. She is passionate about discovering how students learn and supporting them in ways which enable them to succeed. She has provided training to PGCE students at Kingston University and a number of local schools and colleges on teaching strategy. And she also delivers talks on multi-sensory techniques around the world. And if you haven't seen her live, her being on this podcast is just a small version of Susie. Welcome back, Susie.
Thank you very much, Dale. Oh, my goodness. Here is Percy Pig. I can't quite open the packet. Oh, there we go.
She never comes alone. It's always her and Percy. And I'm now going to take one and then finish this bit, and then I can pass it over the baton of talking to you, Susie.
Thank you.
But you don't really need an introduction, do you, on this podcast? Generally, everyone knows what to expect when Susie's in the studio.
I don't know that they do.
No, I will put a photo up of, she's probably brought around 15 friends with her in the studio, which is a little bit odd.
Yes.
But it's Susie, so there's a reason. There's a method in the madness. Is that the one?
There is. I swung by college this morning to get my friends the puppets from the top shelf. We will be introducing some of them later. But I think one of the most important ones that I have to hand here is the octopus. Look at that, Dale. It's absolutely enormous. And I got it in Farnborough. And my cousin said to me, "You've got to go and get an octopus, Susie." And the man said, "I haven't got any." So I told him the story about how I had 30 puppets in my classroom. And he said, "Okay." And he went in. I got the octopus because my friend Melissa said, "Susie, you've only got, 1 pair of hands, but an octopus has got 8, so they can get around the students much more easily and help when you're too busy."
Yes. So today we are talking about the importance and the impact of person-centered learning to help the students to achieve, which sounds like a really big, complex thing when you say person-centered learning. It basically means help the students learn how they learn.
Yes. And find out how they learn, what they're interested in, and then they'll learn much better, giving them strategies, individualized strategies that are going to help them in the future.
Definitely. So where are we going to go?
Well, I'm going to give you this quick definition here, or not necessarily a definition, just a thought, really. Every student has different individual needs and experiences in life, learning in their own unique way. So it's important to teach students using the person-centered approach. And what I find is it's useful to connect their own personal experiences to the curriculum content. So it might be, for example, you're talking about rates of reaction. You link that to a game of rugby. It could be, one of my students recently said that she was interested in netball. So you might link certain sequences of things to a game of netball. She found that quite useful. Other experiences in life, I was talking about law with a student, and she was looking at the glossary and definitions that they use in law, and she didn't understand them, but she went through those definitions and then linked them to things that had happened with her family. And then she understood them, and she annotated the glossary of terms and put pictures in so she could remember it better.
I always like, whenever I'm trying to learn something, is trying to put it into a different context. So you'll always think, oh, so it's like.
Yes.
And it's my way of checking my learning. And when someone says, oh, so this is like this, I try and think of how can I explain this using something completely different that we're maybe more familiar with in our lives, and we have a similar thing. Because when you're a teacher and we're talking about what those students need, you're like, but this is the way I do things. So I like putting it into the way of, well, you do things differently to me. And what I've just come up with is like ironing.
Yes.
There are those who love ironing. There are those who hate ironing. There are those who will do ironing in front of, I think, me and my wife calling it an ironing film.
Oh, my goodness.
A film which is kind of brain dead. You can just watch and enjoy. You don't have to know the story. You can just come in at any moment. So if you're not really listening, you can just carry on. It's fine. And so you come out Die Hards, all those sorts of action-y type films. Great for ironing too, because you can just keeps you entertained as you're doing your boring job. And there are people who will just go iron in a completely separate room in silence, and they'll just enjoy the ironing. And there are some of us like me, and I don't give it to my wife to do. I will do it. But I will do as much as I can to avoid ironing. I will hang clothes up when they're wet and do things like that, so you don't have to. I will iron. And when I will iron properly.
Good.
But we all have our different attitude to how we iron.
Yeah, I know some people listen to podcasts when they iron, and some people listen to podcasts when they're mowing the grass as well, because it's their time.
But yeah, so if we think about, there are things every person does. So you might be someone who drives along in silence. You might be someone who is deep in thought. You're someone who's listening to music to either chill you out or give you some, oh my gosh, let's crank the volume up. Or you might be listening to podcasts, or you might be just having that phone call with a family member, which doesn't really take much effort. Whatever it is you're doing, you do it your way.
That's right. And that's the same in teaching. And so you've got to personalise their learning. And so, first of all, personalised learning, it's an educational approach that customises learning for each student's specific strengths, what they're good at, their needs, their interests and skills, providing a unique, flexible and adaptive learning experience based on those individual students' talents, skills and qualities. And so I know when I was teaching some boys a couple of nights before their GCSE biology exam, I put 5 years of GCSE biology questions on a football, and I threw it to them because they like football, they like rugby, and they enjoyed that lesson and they remembered it. So I personalised it to them. Personalisation means that the individual student will have to decide which outcomes they wish to achieve and how their needs and aspirations may be met. It's a proactive rather than passive approach. I think in teaching, it's better to be proactive and get the student working out how they learn and also giving them independence. It's much better to do that. And so if with that personalisation, if we can address their needs, for that individual student, and we'll mention some of our friends, the puppets, later when we link it to individual case studies, if you like. Empowerment, empowering those students. Over my door, it says, if you believe, you can achieve. And they'll come in and say, oh, I'm going to get a pass. I don't do passes in this room. We need distinctions. preferences, as you said with the ironing, the preferences for them to learn. Some people like revision cards, some people like mind maps. Choice, giving them a choice to do their revision. They might like to do it electronically. They might like to listen to the audiobook rather than read it. Participation. Sometimes students don't like to participate in class. They find it really difficult. Controlling themselves, controlling how well they're going to learn, having control over their learning, wanting to learn, doing deep learning. Independence, being able to go out and learn independently, pick up another book, and just get fascinated by it. At the weekend, I went to Reading. I always nip into W.H. Smith's, and they have the How It Works books.
Yep.
I absolutely love them. And I went to the hairdressers. The mum goes, I've got a couple of books out for you. I've got some on flower arranging and cooking. I said, don't worry, I've got my own magazine, How It Works, the Human Body, because I like amazing but true facts. So she's sitting there with all these lovely magazines laid out, and I just pull my one out of my bag, and I'm looking to see if I can find an amazing but true fact for my students for next term.
But again, that's a whole thing of stereotyping of you're a lady coming into your hairdressing, you're going to like flowers and this and making your house pretty. And it's so, and other things, isn't it? And you're going, no, I'm interested in how things work. I'm interested in this. And that's the thing is you can be who you want to be and you're engaged. Whereas if you had the flowery book, you probably would have got bored. And then probably it would have gone slightly downhill.
Yes. I mean, I'd enjoy the cooking book, I think. I like eating. Obviously, we need some more Percy Pig cereal. Don't forget to take another one. I haven't quite eaten my first one yet.
I know it's working out when you can eat it when the other person's talking. And
That's
with you,
right.
I can eat quite a lot
Oh,
because
yes.
you do a lot of the talking.
Oh. Yeah, so meeting those aspirations, they want an A, they want a D, they want to do well, they want to go to a particular university. One student I taught her A-level biology. She said she wanted to go to Bangor University. So it was Bangor University with marine biology, zoology. Her whole list of 5 was Bangor University, all different courses, because she just had to go there because she liked Bangor. Meeting the aspirations of going there. And so by looking at all of that, you can personalise their learning.
But sometimes you have to rebuild those aspirations as well. Sometimes, if you've got those aspirations go there, but sometimes they've already been beaten out of these students. They've already gone literally going to, I want to get here, but there's no chance because I've been told or I can't. And it's how do you rebuild them into believing? And that, I suppose it comes back to that person-centered approach that as well as kind of helping them to learn, it's helping them to find that belief again.
Yeah, and the path to their success. I do come across students who their parents want them to become doctors, and they're clearly not going to become a doctor because they haven't got the grades at GCSE. So it's finding another career pathway that they can go on to later. Might be a speech therapist or an occupational therapist or a physiotherapist. Lots and lots of different career pathways, professions allied to medicine that they could go into. Health scientist is one that's really important. They can't get people for. So it's.
But I think when you're young, you only learn there's doctors, there's nurses, and there's dentists, and anything else. Nope. And actually, there's a huge range. But it's part of it is educating the student that there isn't just one option, and you can't. There's actually, well, you might not be able to get there, but actually, you still have a huge range of things to aim for.
I always think life is like a game of rounders. Some people get round with one hit. Other people have to stop at each base. So it could be that, you might have to redo your English or your maths. You might do one subject and you get to university and you don't like it. You might change. One girl, when I was studying chemistry at university, she was also studying biochemistry. We had to study different subjects in the first year. And at the end of the first year, she was so clever. They said, would you like to switch to medicine? She was really lucky. Yeah.
But the thing is, when you find, I'm saying if you've been failed in how you learn or it's not been the right way through your GCSEs and you find out how you learn, then you can shine.
You can. Yeah, really, really well. I'm going to say here, what are the common features of a personalised learning plan? So those lessons are tailored to those students' interests. So if you've got a room full of rugby players, then you're going to link that curriculum to rugby. The content involving a variety of different teaching styles and goals are customised through those pathways to meet those students' individual learning needs. And collaboration among those students with similar learning styles and interests. So we get students to work on Google Slides and create revision slides together. You know, one student might get the text, another one gets a graphic, and they fit it together and discuss it. And by teaching one another, they'll remember it better. Reducing the teacher talk by providing students with more choice in their learning. So I'll go in and I'll make something out of Play-Doh, sing keywords to Michael Jackson's Beat It, clap. I conduct stuff. I've got a pointy stick that I conduct with. And I think if they say the information, they'll remember it better.
That's the thing. There is something about that old style rote learning, isn't there? When you want it kind of goes in and it's rhythm of it or whatever. There is, might not go in the most effective way, but if it is learning, it can have, don't do it all rote learning. But there are things which help.
Like times tables, really. That's good for rote learning, and keywords on diagrams, quite good for rote learning. Using mnemonics to remember those keywords as well. I've got here the pace of delivery is adjusted to suit each student's rate of learning, the processing speed. It's quite interesting. You'll give the instructions, you'll give them in one way, you'll give them another way, you'll check with someone in the class that they understand. Then you're just about to get on to the next thing. Bingo! There is in the classroom Lara Lark. She's always there early. Susie, I don't understand. Every lesson, I've given the delivery. They know what they're doing. And she asked me again. She needs to be shown in a different way. I need to go round and speak to her and draw it out in different coloured pens with words and pictures, maybe on a whiteboard. Then she'll understand. She can use that whiteboard. Oh, here's a whiteboard here. Wait a minute. There we go. Use that whiteboard. Write the information on there. They can get their phone out. They love that, to get their phone out and take a photo of what they're going to do. And then they can go home and finish it off.
Not rocket science. And there's a whole thing about this person-centered and changing what it looks like is you're not changing the outcome. You're not changing what knowledge or skills they're going to learn. It's how do I get them to understand that using rugby? How do I get them to understand using X? It's you're not changing the outcomes. You're not changing that. You're just going, what's the hook? How can I get them interested? How can I relate it to their experiences? Because if they all play rugby and I can refer it to kind of when you, whatever situation or somebody's injury, and you can then go, right, so then how long were they off for? 6 weeks. Right, so let's go through the injury. And whatever it is, they will understand it because they've actually had that experience and they've watched that person slowly. They engage because it kind of makes sense. If you did it some other way, the engagement's not there. But that's what it's about, really.
Yeah, I
Getting
think
the hook.
I think when we talk about different disorders, we talk about celiac disease. Sometimes there's someone in class and they'll put their hand up and say, I've got that. And they'll remember all about celiac disease because they remember that person in class that had it. There was a girl years ago whose dad had kidney failure. And she said, would you like me to speak to the class about it? And they remembered it all because they explained how they would have to get her dad up early in the morning to go for dialysis. And it made so much sense to them.
I think when you're someone who you've got your life and they're telling you, well, I have to get up early to do that, it's just giving you that little bit of, it's much closer to home than, oh, somebody has to do this.
Yeah.
It's just a bit more familiarity, a bit more somebody who's at maybe similar routines, similar experiences, how they've had to change their life to support that.
When we talk about cystic fibrosis, there's a film 5 Feet Apart and they watch the film and they really get it. And so when they have their exam and it might say, Mary's got cystic fibrosis, I say, cross out Mary and put Stella, and then they'll remember it. And it'll all come flooding back. So also using those personalised learning technologies to achieve those learning objectives. It could be using assistive technology in some way.
Yep.
Yeah. So they might want an audio book rather than having to read it with, and I said this before, if you're visually impaired, you can get an RNIB Bookshare account, but you can also use it in schools if you have dyslexia. So you can download the book as a PDF and then you can then print it out in a larger font or put it on a colour background, which is really useful.
Definitely.
There we go. So the benefits of that personalised learning that I see with my students are it provides increased student participation and inclusion. If you'll join them all in and they're learning in a way that they understand, they'll join in the lesson. It increases their motivation and engagement. And earlier I was talking about a girl who was completely switched off. And I found out that she was dyslexic and I put the green background on her textbook. Well, first of all, I downloaded it as a PDF from RNB Bookshare, gave it a green background, and then she was engaged. She was switched off when she came in, closed posture, crossed arms. Next lesson, she was smiling. It's really useful and it benefits students if those students can move along at their own pace. They can take their initiative over their own education and they can learn from one another. If they learn from one another, they're teaching one another, they're reinforcing that information, crystallizing it out. They might like to use new IT skills. They might like to use mind mapping such as Inspiration or Coggle. And we were talking earlier about using widget, and I found a real transformation with the students this year using widget. It's really helped them.
And it's important to just point, when you're talking students, you're not talking 5-year-olds, are you?
No.
You are talking 16, 17, 18-year-olds who widget is supporting their learning.
It is.
Huge impact.
And that widget is quite often used in special needs schools, but I found it really helps my sixth form students.
It's, to me, is like, if you have things like, before we start recording, I talk about it on your phone, every app has an icon.
Yes.
You access your phone via icons, by
Yes.
symbols. It helps you organize. So if you have kind of your content organized and you recognize the symbols and what it means, you'll be able to find that information you want quicker. The image will jog your memory. It helps you be more organized, and it is that visual prompt helps you to know what's within there.
It does. And I think, I went into a bookshop recently in Brentwood where I went to school, and there was a book on the shelf that said, I'm autistic and I learn in pictures. I thought that was interesting. So you need to be aware of that. You need to do the dual coding, words and pictures. Then all those students are accessing the information in the lesson. If you personalise that learning, it improves retention and recall for those exams. So that's going to help to get better results. And it's preparing those students for what they call the new economy developing in the 21st century, where workers have to be prepared to forge their own path. And jobs are changing, aren't they? Jobs in 10 years that don't exist now will start to exist with the new technology.
Definitely.
I think there are challenges in using personalised learning. You've got to get all the teachers to buy in to it and the students. If they've come from school and they always just have the worksheet, there's a worksheet, fill it in. For them to suddenly have to start doing things in a different way, they find that quite tricky. And you've got to find that time to do that. I'm really lucky that I've got a classroom with all my props in it. So if I need to show them something, I can just open a drawer. This morning, I just opened a drawer and pulled out a map with a flower on it. I'll show you that later, Dale. So yeah, I've just got all the stuff there. I've got all my puppets in there. I want to link the information to a case study. You might not have specialised resources such as the textbooks. I know that funding's a challenge. Audiobooks, PDFs and hard copies of things. People might be mindful about the cost of photocopying. And reframing that learning process is tricky from teacher-led when you're used to standing up saying, here's the PowerPoint, listen to the PowerPoint, there's the worksheet, fill it in. But we changed the teaching to, instead of filling in packs, to actually give the pack with the information in, but spending the time showing them how to learn.
Definitely. I remember when my kids were at primary school, there's all this thing about student-led learning and giving them agency and kind of, we're doing this topic, but what is it you want to cover? So you kind of got that involvement from the students from the beginning, which meant they were more engaged, more involved, better outcomes. But I think over the years, and that is about probably 10 years ago, that's kind of gone away. And it is getting through the curriculum. And I know some trusts are now going, here are the science lessons for year 9 for the year, and you will teach the lessons as they are, no deviation, no hesitation. But it is, you teach it exactly as it is. You're not tweaking it to your students to increase that engagement. You are just getting through the content as decided by someone who's never met your students, which is the opposite of actually what helps students learn.
Yeah, I went for an interview at school in Leatherhead many years ago, and they opened this file and said, there's lesson 1, there's lesson 2. And I had a chat with the headmaster at the end, and he said, would you like to work here? And I said, no, because I don't think I can teach like that. I like to find out how my students learn and teach them in a way that they'll understand. So I didn't get the job, and then I got the job at Farnborough, so I was very lucky. Because this is my 30th year.
30 years.
It's interesting to see, looking at that personalised learning and balancing that pace of the lesson, giving them time to actually consolidate their learning and understand what they're doing for retention recall. So I've got a quote here for you here, Dale, for the person-centred approach. He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened. What do you think of that?
Oh, I love that one. It's the same thing as finding fault in others is easy. Finding a fault in yourself is hard. It's really easy to kind of look at everyone else and blame things on everyone else, or kind of think, oh, that person's, but actually to look at yourself, we don't like doing. We do not like looking at ourselves. We don't like looking in mirrors for too long. We don't like really kind of looking into ourselves and going, why did you do that? Why am I we don't like those answers. Yeah, anything about where you look at yourself is really powerful. And I think we don't do it enough.
I've got my second one, Carl Rogers, which is about the person-centered approach. It's the client who knows what hurts, what directions to go, what problems are crucial, what experiences have been deeply buried. And if you know what those experiences are, and you can link those experiences to your learning, you're more likely to remember it.
You will, definitely.
So my person-centered approach, we use this in health and social care, person-centered approach, when talking about how carers help patients or clients or service users to create a care plan. So the person-centered approach is to see the student as an individual, focusing on their personal needs, wants, goals, and aspirations. The individual student becomes central to that education process. The support of the student needs must be designed in partnership with the individual, their teacher, the SENCO, the tutor, the family, the carers, and other professionals. So it could be, for example, if a student has dyslexia, they might have an individualised education plan that they would follow.
Yeah.
And as we said earlier, sometimes the teacher may not be fully aware of what that education plan is, individualised education planning, or how to implement it.
And on that bit where you said it involves all of these people, that people can hear all that, go, oh, that sounds a lot of work, getting all those people. But it's not. Generally, if you start with the teacher who knows the student the most, the SENCO, the student, and the parents, you'll get maybe 80 to 90% of the way there. But the important bit is making sure that everyone else involved in that child accesses that information so they understand it and use the same strategies and approaches that work. Then as you do that, over time, they will also input back in things that have worked for them. So you don't have to get everyone involved from the beginning. I think it's a really big, no, it starts smaller with those key people and it will grow if everyone's involved and everyone's, again, as like we're asking the students to be involved, asking the teachers to have their opinions.
Yeah, that's right. So that person-centered approach, it's useful for identifying what's important for that student and allows us to examine provisions and approaches that might be required to meet a child's needs. We identify what's important to allows us to consider how to achieve this in a way that takes account of what motivates a young person. So if there's some sort of, I don't know, prize or something that they can aim for, then they're more likely to do it. And celebrating their success and giving them praise for something that they've done. Praising the effort, not always the outcome.
No, and what is a reward to one person could be different. So it is finding out what means a lot for them. And it might be not what you're expecting. We're not talking about going out and buying prizes or anything like that. It might be literally an extra email, or especially with older students, you email them going, it was amazing, whatever. But it's finding out what means a lot to them and working towards that.
When I visit a school in London and I go in there and I moderate, there's a teacher, she has cards from maybe the headmistress or her line manager that says, well done for doing so-and-so this week. And that's really nice.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be big.
No.
But noticing means a lot.
And she's got a thank you wall, a whole wall of thank you cards. She's obviously been there a while. And she said, I've got a whole wall of thank you cards, but the best one I like is this little slip of paper that has this really nice comment of when the teacher went in and assessed her lesson and found something that was really nice in there that she was doing. And that makes her feel really good about what she's doing. She's doing it right and everybody appreciates what she does. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a massive box of chocolates.
No.
It could just be something on a little scrap of paper. So that value of the person-centered working with children and families is the heart of everything. It's been part of that same code of practice, 2015. And those principles are clear. We almost always must have regard to the importance of those young person, their parents participating as fully as possible in those decisions, getting the buy-in from the parents, the views, wishes and feelings of the young person and those parents. So it's all about me, isn't it? It's all about...
It's always about Susie.
Well, it's all about the individual student. Yeah. So person-centered practice can help parents, teachers and carers concentrate on the child as an individual, as well as notice and identify simple things that can make a massive difference. And when you crack and find that one thing that makes that difference, it's amazing. It could be, for example, you're asking a student to finish their essay for the next morning and it's a Thursday, but you know that student works in the fish and chip shop on a Thursday night. So you go in the other room, you do a Dickinson's deal and you say, I can't get you to do it for tomorrow morning, can I? Because you're in the chip shop. But how about you come at lunchtime if you're free? You can come and sit in my workshop and finish it. And that makes them feel good because you understand that their life, you know, what's going on at home and what they need to do.
That's the thing.
Just in your four walls.
It's not removing the expectations. The work has to be done. It has to be done within a time frame. However, understanding their personal circumstances and saying, okay, so you can't get done for that, but actually, if we do this, you could do this. It's that slight bit of flexibility, which means a lot to them.
It does. And I think this way of working should be integral to all our practice as teachers, you know, not just bolted on the person-centered approach, really. And you need an openness about that experience. You need the trust. And that's the big thing, isn't it? The trust and Finton quite often talks about the mood in the room. You know, if the mood is right and they trust you, they'll work for you. An internal source of evaluation. Well, I said that last time. Do you think I ought to have said that? How can I reframe that in order to get the student to do better next time? And a willingness to continue growing, making it better for those students, making it easier and finding a different way to help them in the future.
That bit there, that's probably bigger than you realise. That, and I know most people, basically generally everyone that comes on the podcast, I would say has that growth mindset of this is where I am and this is what I know now. But when I meet them again, they will have more knowledge. They've had experience which has reaffirmed their current understanding and helped it grow, or they've learned something new. And that's the sort of thing. I became a teacher. I've got my PGC. I've become a teacher. I now know everything. This is how I teach. That's how you teach now. But if you're open, you can get better.
You can, and seeing things in different ways, going to conferences, listening to, how different teachers deliver the information in different ways. As a moderator, I go around schools and colleges and I see on the walls how people are delivering things, how they're getting their students to complete their essays, how they're giving them some sort of frame to use for the introduction, main content and conclusion. And just discussing that teaching and learning, with different teachers from different schools is really, really interesting. And also, I teach them something in class and they might go off to, for example, Surrey University and they come back. Some of them come back 25 years later and say, "Oh, Susie, do you remember when you taught me so and so?" Well, I learnt that when I was at university, or I was sitting in the village hotel in the changing room and this girl goes, "You taught me." I said, "Oh, did I? What's your name?" And she told me, and this is quite strange, but she went to become a special needs nurse. And in her personal statement, she wrote, "Who will believe Mowgli will be my inspiration to become a special needs nurse?" And she looked at me, she said, "How did you remember that?" Because the students used to work with the Henry Tyndale School. And Henry Tyndale is a local special needs school to us. And they had to rewrite the script for the special needs children. And she had to rewrite the section for Mowgli. And by working with these special needs children, it inspired her to become a special needs teacher.
Wow.
And I saw her, I don't know, a few years later. It was nice. Yeah, there we go.
And that's the thing, is we're talking about this person-centered approach, but it's kind of person-centered for everyone, because if you tweak what you're doing to include those students, then you're basically you're putting the buy-in first. They then respond, and then you have a giant wall full of thank you notes because of the impact.
I haven't got a giant wall, but I've got a few.
You have a giant fan club, Susie.
Oh, thank you.
But it's that sort of thing, and I know in schools you have people are going, kind of, you have to do a strict line, you have this, or the students won't learn, or they're disruptive, they're this. Then you've got a student with a similar cohort of children, maybe even more disruptive in air quotes, more challenging, more problems. And yet actually their outcomes are better. Everyone's life is easier and happier. They're getting on, they're having fun. And at the end of their time, they're going to write a thank you note, or their parents are going to write a thank you note. And the bit that's changed is the teacher is seen as a human, and the teacher sees the students as human, and how can we all succeed together?
So I think, and looking at this person-centered approach, as you just said, knowing the student as an individual, knowing something that makes them tick and addressing their needs, empowering them. Yes, you can do it. Of course you can do it. Empathy and compassion. So it could be that person has mental health issues, And you need to show empathy and compassion. And they're having a bad day. Just to report, Dale, I painted my multisensory garden, not last week, the week before. Green paint, back wall with butterflies.
Nice.
I got them from the pound shop in Farnborough. They're that big, which is about 30 centimetres across. And it is beautiful. And I've been given some plants from a lady who swims up and down in the morning, and she works at a local nursery. She gave me a special deal. Sorry, I can't help my dad would always, oh, what's the deal, my daughter? So she gave me a special deal on the plants. She said £3 each. So she gave me 15 plants. So I'm thinking 45 quid. 35, I got staff discount. So to sort of come out occasionally, I might even get Auntie Olive out in a minute when we talk about the deaf. Okay. So, empathy and compassion and taking these students out into my garden if they're having a meltdown, having a difficult day. Respect and dignity for that student and giving them choice in the way they learn, in the way they understand, giving them a choice. Oh, excuse me, Susie, can you tell me about that again? I didn't get it the first time. I'm not having a go at them. So I had the bingo girl that always asked me again after you've delivered it 2 or 3 times. Bingo, there she is. Susie, I still don't understand. And at parents' evening, she went, I'm terribly sorry. I always ask you again how to do the work. And I said, doesn't matter. I said, because you're teaching me how to deliver that in a better way.
Yeah.
Because I'm learning from you. Respecting that individual's values and preferences. Participation. Do they want to participate? Do they not want to participate? Independence and control. So, I bought my friends the puppets today, Dale, because I was going to talk about these individual students, okay? And if we're looking about addressing their needs, and I put pies here, not apple pie, not gooseberry pie, not lemon meringue pie, but physical, intellectual, emotional, and social needs. What are their physical, intellectual, emotional, and social needs? So over here in the corner, we've got the autistic boy. Okay, can you see him? It's Harry Headphones. And, Harry Headphones will come in the class, headphones on, blue flashing lights as he's sitting down in the class. Well, you can't ask him to take them off. You're not going to take them off because he's happy with his headphones. So we're talking about care practice and provision, and these people from Southampton University say they want to come in and talk about paramedic science. So we're sitting there and there's a knock at the door. You've got some visitors, Susie. And I went, oh, okay, let them in. So they came in. Harry Headphones is not happy because visitors do not come in his lesson on a Thursday afternoon. Thursday afternoon is for typing. So there's Harry Headphones. Susie, I'm not happy that these people are in here because I don't know why they're in here. I said, they're going to talk about paramedic science. What has that got to do with care practice and provision? So he puts his headphones on. He's got his headphones. He's sitting there with his computer and he's tapping away on the computer like this. And I said, I'm really sorry. Harry Headphones is doing his tapping. And the person giving the talk went, don't worry, just leaving to tap away. I said, okay. So he tapped away. We got through the talk. We got through the lesson. Next week. Susie, I've got this information about paramedic science. It doesn't fit into care practice and provision. What on earth do I do with it? So what do you say, Dale?
That's the thing is in reality, and that's the bit I love about this, is it was like, okay, you've mucked up the order of things. You've adding some extra information in. I have no idea where to file it. But I listened, I typed, I've got all this information, I made lots of notes. You can probably test me on this, which comes back to what is the problem of him typing and him wearing headphones if he took all that information in and made all that notes, and now he's going, what am I supposed to do with this? All this information you've taught me, because it doesn't fit into the curriculum as I thought. He's learned. He listened.
He has.
In his way.
Yes, he did. My second person here, we've got hearing impaired student. It's Audio Andy. So I actually taught one of these boys years ago, and he would come in to me at curriculum support, and I'd have to enunciate the words really clearly. His mum said he had glue ear. So I met her at the rugby match, and I said, do you think it'd be a good idea for him to get a hearing aid? Oh, they're really expensive, she said. I went, yeah, but you're sending him to a really expensive school. You know, I'm sure you've got loads of spare cash. So she got him a hearing aid. He was a different boy. He started concentrating in class. He understood what was going on. He was more alert. It was absolutely brilliant. I've got another one over here. That's the one with the yellow hair.
Yep.
She's normally called Lucy.
And these aren't figments of Susie's imagination. I literally, on a table to my right, I have 12 puppets, 13 puppets.
There we go. So this is going to be a selective newt. And I'm going to call her Quiet Quincy. Okay? So you might have someone in your class that doesn't say anything. And you need to know whether they understood or not. My son actually said he had someone in his biology class that didn't speak. And they used to write the answers on a little mini whiteboard. The teacher would ask him a question and he would write the answers on the mini whiteboard. But if everybody had left the class, I would go round to Quiet Quincy and find out, are you okay? Do you know what you're doing? But she would talk to me when no one else was there, which was absolutely fascinating.
Again, whether you're saying the answer or holding up a whiteboard, there's no difference. I actually probably prefer everyone to just have a whiteboard to be less interruptive, because people could just hold the whiteboard up when they got the answer, and kind of, if everyone's facing the front, you wouldn't see it. So it's like almost like shouting out the moment you have it. You can write it down the moment you have it.
And that's why we play the weakest link.
Love it.
Yeah, we love playing the weakest link. It's good. My next person is someone with sight loss. So they could be Sonia Squint. And over here, I've got Sonia Squint, and she's got a pair of wraparound sunglasses. Now, I came across a Sonia Squint recently. And this student was struggling throughout all their lessons, and they sent them to me. And they said that as they looked at the page, the words all went all blurred and they were moving around. I said, have you had your eyes tested? And they said, yes. And they told me that they had a squint, but their tutor didn't know and the other teachers didn't know. And the reason why they were falling behind is because they couldn't read the textbook. They couldn't read the information. So they needed to go to the specialist at Frimley and get tested for that. I also had Violet Vision. When she came in, she had modified papers and her packs had to be printed in a larger font. So again, if you've got the RNIB Bookshare, you can download the book as a PDF and then convert it into a larger font, print it out as A3. But what's really nice is if you have it available in Word, you can change that font from, say, size 10 to size 18. And that's much more suitable. Or you might have an audiobook.
You can also change it maybe from Times New Roman to Comic Sans or something else.
That's right. Yes, change it from Times New Roman to Arial or Comic Sans. My next person is a physically disabled person, and I've put in Rowena Rower. And Rowena Rower was actually in my class. Her name wasn't Rowena. So she was in my class and she used to come in and she would always sit by the door. She would always come in early. And when you're physically disabled, you can take your driving test when you're 16. So she had this really good modified car, VW Caddy, and she would come in and she would only really had one working arm and she would type with her left hand, but she'd be able to drive. She was really quick at whatever she did. Her brain was really, really fast. And she used to go rowing in the evening. Maybe she was the cox, I'm not sure. But she actually went rowing even though she was physically disabled, which I applaud her. She was absolutely brilliant. The next person I've got here is a dyslexic person. It's Entrepreneur Eddie. And those dyslexic people are brilliant at thinking out the box. They need the big picture, okay? They need that big picture so that they can understand what's going on. Wait 1 second, Dale.
She's looking for something.
Oh, just take this.
Oh.
Hang on.
She's unrolling a very large roll of paper.
There we go. So this is a really large roll of paper here. And students love to write things on large rolls of paper.
Because you're up to about 12 foot now.
Hang on, I haven't quite undone it yet. Oh, here we go. I'm just finding out what it's about, actually.
Red blood cells, apparently.
That'll be the one. Okay, so it's about red blood cells, arteries, veins, and stuff like that. So they love using this. I use lining paper or old wallpaper. And so dyslexic students love mind mapping. They love getting out the felt tips and putting all that information together because they like seeing the big picture. Dale, do you like the old wallpaper technique?
I do. I find it interesting that the bit I'm looking right in front of me has the pies, the physical, you've got intertechnical, emotional and social.
There we go. Yeah, all the pies there. So physically, how are they going to do it? Intellectually, do they understand? Emotional, have they got an emotional link to that information? And social, let's have a chat about it. And socially, how, if we're talking about a particular condition, how is that socially going to affect that person? So there's my entrepreneur Eddie and how he might use those giant mind maps.
I will roll that up later.
Okay. I swung by college this morning and picked that one up in the cupboard, which was nice. We've got ADHD here. We might have a boy over there. Footballer Freddie. And Footballer Fred would come into my class last year and he had ADHD. He was a footballer. What he loved was to get the footballs out and kick them around the room. And when he finished doing that, he'd get the balloons out and he'd get the biggest ones and he'd blow the balloons up and then he would kick them around the room. And I come on, Footballer Freddie, are we going to get any work out of you today? But once he'd done that and he'd kicked his footballs around and he's done balloons, he would then go to the top drawer in my cupboards, pull out the drawer, and I've got all these fidget toys. So he'd get loads of fidget toys and he'd start fiddling with them. Once he did that, he would sit down and he'd get on with his work. And he'd work really well. And do you know, by the end of the year, he was a completely different boy because he would come in, he knew the score, he didn't get the footballs out anymore or the balloons, just went to the drawer, found the fidget toy, sat down and went through all the exam papers. He knew what he had done. He knew what he didn't understand. He would sit there and go through the papers and then do all the answers and work out what he didn't understand and what he had to revise for next week. It was amazing how he completely calmed down.
It was very much self-directed. He came in, I need to do this.
Yes.
And you allowed, and he slowly, probably over time, worked out what actually he needed and things like that. But it's very much he was allowed to do what he needed to do. Mm. And there is a whole thing around not disrupting other learners. So maybe kicking balloons around. Yes. Not.
He would come in early and do that when the others weren't there.
It's even better.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing. There is this whole thing of disrupting others and all that lot. But actually, you can probably allow more than you realise. Mm. because if you allow each person to be themselves, they're generally not that worried about what everyone else has got, because I can be myself and I'm quite happy. So I do like that. I do like that. This is what I need, and not telling someone this is the order you do it, or this is how you learn, or this is how you revise. It's what works for you.
You see, I discovered this many years ago in the 80s because I used to go and teach the trumpet. And I used to go and visit people in their houses and teach them trumpet there on a one-to-one. And I used to go to this boy's house in Hutton. He was about 7 or 8. And he probably had ADHD. He used to run around the house when I arrived. But the one thing we had to do was to have a game of chess before I actually did the trumpet lesson. And his mother said, yes, he loves chess. I said, I'm sure he does, but I've come to give a trumpet lesson. Couldn't you just have a quick game of chess? Okay. So I had to have a game of chess and do it in about 5 minutes, which chess is normally quite a long game, isn't it? And then he would have a half an hour trumpet lesson, as long as I could get back and get to the bus, because the bus went every hour from Brentwood to Ongar. And then if the chess game went on a bit long, his mum would give me a lift up to Brentwood to the bus stop so that I'd get the bus in time. So yeah, that's a long, long time ago. I thought that the weekend, back in your mind, that you've got to do something with that child that they enjoy, because if you've given that game of chess and that they've won, obviously you had to let him win every time. If he won, then he would concentrate on playing his trumpet.
But I like the fact that you did something which worked. You went, okay, rather than saying I'm not playing chess, you went, what's the worst that can happen? You had a swig of Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
And went, what's worse that can happen? And you play chess and he learns. Okay. And then probably later in life you went, oh. And that's the thing I find things that work. And then later on I find out the reason why it works. There is theory behind it and I've fallen across it by chance. But there's a whole theory of why it works. You're going, oh, interesting.
But that whole thing, all those years ago, I'm now doing in class. I'm not playing chess in every lesson, but
she walks in, there's 30 chessboards and she has to beat all her students before she can teach them.
Yeah, I'm not doing that, but I'm doing other things that they enjoy, which is good. Okay. I've spoken about footballer Fred, but I really need to speak about the ODD person. Olivia Awkward. Oh my goodness. This is the one where you think, what on earth do I do with her? She comes in. Would you like to sit down? No, I want to stand up. Would you like to read a book? No, don't read books. Would you like to do this question? No. Would you like to do some revision cards? No. It's all in the pack. Here's the pack. I've got the pack. Would you like to play the weakest ink? No. Would you like to colour in that diagram? No. What do I do with that? Because this girl's got to pass an exam. So I went to Hatfield, to the University of Hertfordshire, and there was a conference there. And I went to a stall. It was a bookstall, and the woman running the bookstall was a Senko. And I said to her, I've got Olivia Awkward. What on earth do I do with her? And she said, it's the way you ask the question, Susie. I said, oh, okay, how do I do it? Don't ask her, she said. If you want them to colour in a diagram and label it, put it by the door. So everybody came in. I said, there's a diagram there. Can you label it and colour it in, please? Of the kidney. She took it, she coloured it in. Can you do this exam question? Pass them all round. They're laminated. Don't ask her to do it. Just put them all out. Leave the pen there. Okay, class, do the exam question. Don't go around and see how she's doing, because she doesn't want you to talk to her. Really fascinating. Really fascinating working with her. And then we got onto coursework. And she said, I'm good at coursework. I went, okay. If you tell me the night before what we're doing, I'll get it done. So she got it done early. Bingo! She didn't have to come in. because she'd done the work. She didn't annoy anyone. And she went from being really difficult to being really good.
You just weren't asking too much of her that she was struggling with. So she was unable to do all those things.
Yeah, in the way that she learnt, in the way that worked for her. And yeah, she finished early. She wanted to. She wanted to prove that she could do it, which was amazing. My last two people are the family carer, caring Claire, who, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and socially, how's that going to affect her? Physically, she's drained. Intellectually, she's got to understand about her parents' conditions. Emotional, a big emotional strain on her looking after her parents. And socially, she's not really getting out with her friends because as soon as she's finished college, she's going home. I actually signposted her to the food bank in Aldershot, and they prepared a bag of food for her. And I phoned up the food bank and got them to speak to her, link them together. And when she finished, she said, "Thank you for enabling me to get a distinction star, but more importantly, thank you for helping my parents." And I didn't really help her parents. I just tried to be interested to see if there was anything I could do. And because I linked her up with the food bank, she got some food and she was able to cook that for parents. She really appreciated that. And then we've got forces, area, army. So around here, we're close to Aldershot, the home of British Army. And we've got a lot of students whose parents might be going away abroad and they're really worried about them going abroad. They might be missing them for 6 months. So their attendance might be poor. You have to be aware of that sort of thing and see how they are. Take them out the back door, go into the multisensory garden, have a quick chat to them, see if they're okay. I just go through my list, Dale. Empowerment and power. So empowering Harry headphones, give them the power to be able to do their work and feel confident in that. Empathy and compassion, maybe with Sonia Squint, who's having difficulty reading. Respect and dignity, dignity for caring Claire, who's having difficulty, looking after parents, choice and autonomy for all of them. The choice to learn in a different way, respecting their individual values and preferences to do their work in a certain way. You might have cultural differences. We have a lot of Nepalese in the class. Yeah, they might have to go off to festivals. And participation. Some people don't want to participate. Some people don't want to watch that film. It could be triggering something that you're showing.
And remember, when we think of participation, we generally think of participation, you're literally thinking of hands up, who's going to answer a question. And they might want to participate, but not in that way. And that's the sort of thing I think most of the current generation seems to be hate being asked questions. I mean, I have to say an answer out loud. They seem to all absolutely 100% hate it. So can you do it a different way with Weakest Link or something else? Can you do it a different way? Because the whole point is checking their knowledge. Do you understand? Have you understood? You can do it in different ways.
Yeah, we had to do about health promotion a couple of years ago, and one girl was worried about talking about her presentation in front of other students. And so I sat in an office and I did it with her, and she went through it with me on a one-to-one basis. So yes, they might have to participate. They might have to give a presentation, but they might not be comfortable talking in front of other people. And then independence, giving those independent skills to be able to carry out further research, to finish off the piece of work, independently answer the questions. I know Abigail comes down and does podcasts. She talks about automaticity. So being able to get the exam questions, we laminate the diagrams and independently go through answering those questions, finding out which bits you don't understand, you can't remember, and being able to go away and learn that information. The girl who got the highest mark in her anatomy exam, I said to her, "How did you get that?" She said, "I knew what I didn't know." And she would say to me in class, Susie, I still don't get how that kidney works. Can you go over it again and again? So being self-aware so she could become independent. Controlling their behaviour. And we didn't mention the word masking, did we, Dale?
No, you have not mentioned the word masking. And interesting, because you told me a story of how you masked recently, didn't you?
Mm.
And that's the thing is, in all this, there is, we know the pros and cons of masking, and there are things like that. And I think with masking is that person is hiding their difficulty from their teacher.
Yeah.
So you were at a conference.
Yes.
And you have visual impairment.
Mm.
So you could not see the screen.
Yeah.
And you're at a conference, someone's delivering a session, and you could not see the screen at all.
No.
And you didn't say anything, did you?
No. I didn't want to stand out. Whereas others in the conference with ADHD or autism, hello, I've got autism. Depends on what the conference is about, really. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And I've worked with 2 students with visual impairment recently who hadn't told their teachers and they were really struggling.
And part of it is knowing that actually what you're struggling with, others don't. There's a whole thing around not knowing, but then there is kind of maybe feeling embarrassed, or there's a whole thing around
Stigma.
A lot of stigma around things like that. And there's that confidence of being able to go, look, I can't see the power. Oh, do you want to sit at the front table? And then as the whole conference stops and Susie has to stand up and walk all the way to the front with everyone watching, you just don't want to, you want to blend in and disappear.
You do. Just hide. Yeah. Or just listen.
And it is, and sometimes in those situations, no matter how accommodating everyone makes it, it still doesn't help.
Yeah, one lady who had ADHD, she said, I practice sitting on my hands so that I'm not moving around and rocking and stuff like that. So they have their strategies, but being sat in a room for a long time at a conference is really hard. Is it? Yeah, when you have to concentrate for that long. So we've got some key information here that we can gather for the person-centered approach. You could ask the student what's important to them for success. So, sometimes you do one-to-ones and the teacher takes them out in the corridor and has a chat to the student individually. This is where you'd ask these questions. What's important to you to keep them healthy, safe? Looking at that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What do they like and admire about that person? Are they fun, kind, sporty, quick thinking? What are their likes and dislikes? Coffee. They don't like being late. Lara Lark, she's always on time. She's always early. Yeah. What makes them happy or sad? Is it the weather? Is it noise? They don't like a lot of noise in the class. Food. One girl was allergic to some sort of fruit. And so, if a student was hungry and they had pineapple and they cracked open a mixed fruit salad from M&S or something, it would set her off and she'd have an allergic reaction. How do they communicate with others? Verbal, text messages. How do you want others to communicate with them? Smiling. It could be their hearing impaired sign language. We teach students a bit of sign language. How do they have any significant routines or rituals? They might like to sit at the door. There might be Harry headphones. They might have their earphones when they're using the computer. What places they like to go? The library, McDonald's, Starbucks, Costa. They want to go in my garden. Who are the important people in their life? Family, friends? What are their gifts, qualities, and skills? Are they musical? Are they sporty? What be their perfect lesson, their perfect day? What would their perfect week look like? How can you encourage them to make it better next time? So we can listen carefully to the student, respond to what they're saying using reflective listening skills, feelings, paraphrasing. Make them express their feelings about how they're coping in class. It might be Lara Lark, she's early, but she might have difficulty coping in class. Yeah. I know that Olivia Awkward found it difficult. She was always 10 minutes late. She just couldn't be there at the start. I'd be receptive to their non-verbal and verbal behaviour, the way they sit. They might have their head on the desk. Also, discuss any out-of-character conversations or emails. I had an email on a Sunday about a student who hadn't done their homework. "Oh, I'll get it in for Tuesday," she said. I said to her, "I don't do Tuesday because I can't remember that. I'm old. Did you not know? I'm old and ugly. I only do Fridays because I can remember that. So why would you say you're bringing it to me on Tuesday?" What's going on? Took the register, found out there was something quite horrific going on. She had to go and see the nurse. And summarise what that student just said when they're checking out. So we need to listen, accept what they're saying, respect what they say, understand what they say, and respond to what they say. Now, I've got a nice flower diagram here, Dale, and what's quite nice to do is I have this laminated, and I get the students to write in on the flower diagram, what are their skills and talents? Then I know that couple of things about them.
That thing is, in theory, the bits you're talking about, it kind of touched on the whole one-page profile, what helps me succeed, and things like that. But it's one of those things is if Susie spends all her time getting to know this student and builds this amazing one-page profile, another teacher can use that as a way to build the relationships. You don't just assume, they support Man United, I'll go straight in talking about Man United or whatever it is they're into. It's like you don't have that relationship. But you use that to, they're into this. Okay, let's start. And it helps you work out what are the inroads, what are the conversations I can start around that will get kind of hopefully a response.
Yeah. Yeah. And knowing those students, no, I've got some GCSE students here, knowing that my first boy was dyslexic. He learned a certain way. My next boy is hearing impaired. The next one's very quiet. So you would look at his body language, and when he understood, he'd then smile. And then another boy, he was from Nigeria. He would visualize things and remember things in a certain way. So I use strawberry shoelaces and raspberry shoelaces, show them the hormones in the body. The A-level student, it could be that they learn with certain colours and pictures. They don't understand the words. They need to break them down, find a way of saying it. But what about all those students that were in COVID that learnt through the computer? There's that whole generation, isn't there, that have learnt in a completely different way.
And the thing, I think COVID, it just reinforced this screen watching, the one-way communication. Because if you watch, generally, either you're watching a pre-made video or your teacher is teaching you, and generally everyone has their cameras off and their microphones off and you're being talked at. So that chance to kind of have those conversations and also kind of disappeared.
Yeah. So my next bit, I wanted to, just got my brain in here. Look, just take it apart. There, just picked that up from college this morning. Okay. So got the brain there. We've got the two halves. The left brain is involved with logical processing, focusing on facts, realist, planned and orderly. You quite often find STEM student a more left brain than right brain. They prefer non-fiction. I was talking about that nice magazine earlier. How the Body Works. Okay, and the right brain will be emotional, focusing on art and creativity, imagination, absent-minded, prefers fiction, enjoys creative and storytelling. Now, people talk about left and right brain, but my brain works both because I like a nice few facts. I am a chemist, but I do like a bit of art and I'm very creative. So it's sort of all mixed up, really. It's not always one or the other, but we can look at those different parts of the brain and we can see that, for example, the cerebrum controls voluntary actions, conscious thought, vision. And so if you use different parts of the brain instead of just talking, you'll remember that information better with multisensory teaching, as we've spoken about before. So if we think about vision, having pictures, using puppets, actions, speech, talking, improve the memory and problem solving. Cerebellum is used for balance. So if you jump up and down and clap, those keywords you're talking about, they'll remember it better because they're using the cerebellum there for their movement. Okay. And so looking at those different parts of the brain helps that student to remember instead of just using one side of the brain. Let's use the whole brain.
Yes.
And make it work. Now, I know we're getting short of time because Dale has looked at his watch at least 2 or 3 times. So I'm going to whiz through here because the last few pictures and slides are just examples of what we've done to personalize that approach and use person-centered approach to learning. So when I was at university training, I remember seeing my tutor make a plant cell out of a shoebox. I thought that was totes amazing. I thought, if she can do it, I can do it. So I made a cell out of a shoebox. I made it out of Play-Doh. I also made an animal cell out of Play-Doh. You can make it out of sweets. You can even make a cake out of it. And my son was asked to write up a PowerPoint and present about a country in French. So he did the Guadeloupe because it's French. And on Wikipedia, it's all in French. How about that? His friend was in a program that was filmed in Guadeloupe. And when he started talking about it, he goes, "Oh, my dad's an actor." And he was in the program that's filmed in Guadeloupe. It'll come to my brain in a minute, the film. I'll go through the stages of how he did it. And then I'll remember the film at the end. So I spoke to my son and asked him what he already knew about Guadeloupe. He knew a lot because he used to watch the film every Thursday night with me. They might have some initial light bulb moments. Then he used to visualize what it was like by watching, here's the program, Death in Paradise.
Ah.
So his friend's dad was in a Death in Paradise episode. So he was quite excited. Now brainstorm those ideas from the TV program, make a mind map. He dictated the slide contents onto his iPad or iPhone. And we made these slides, 2 slides a page, and they were made into flashcards. Then he could rehearse that PowerPoint, and then it was ready for his presentation. I've got an example here of the flowering plant. Now, over there, Dale, I actually have the mat that I made.
Oh, the big mat with all the different parts of the flowers.
Yes, it's in that bit of knitting over there.
I can see it.
Do you want me to get it out?
I'm going to say yes, but I will look at it afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, everyone's going to sit there and wait for a couple of minutes while I'm looking at this lovely cake. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to look at it afterwards.
Okay. So we had the parts of the plant, and then Harry couldn't remember it. So we had stigma style over in carpal, and Harry said, "Oh," I said, "Do you know anyone starting with an S?" And he said, "Well, my mum's called Sophie." So for stigma style over in carpal, he remembered Sophie sits on a chair. For the DNA, one of the Nepalese girls says she doesn't understand how DNA replicates. So I've got zips in my classroom and I show them using zips. For mitosis, we were teaching that to some Chinese boys. And I said, "Oh, we can use pipe cleaners." And they went, "We did that downstairs, miss." So I used balloons instead. And I linked it to a game of football because they were wearing a Manchester United strip. But here, my next example is using slides to create revision cards. And so the students work together in pairs for the cardiovascular system. And on the page, they've got red blood cells. They're small, skinny, and flexible, fit into capillaries. And they've used different fonts to show that a small font, a skinny font, and a flexible font, no nucleus makes room for the hemoglobin. A biconcave disc carries oxygen, carbon dioxide. But when they've got oxygen and carbon dioxide, they've actually got a little lorry with oxygen and carbon dioxide in the back. And they're made in the bone marrow. So they've got a bone with made in the bone marrow inside. Last year, I had a boy and a girl that never understood anything unless I wrote it in a family tree. I had to provide a certain type of scaffolding for them. I wanted them to write about 2 chronic conditions, celiac disease and coronary heart disease. I asked them to link it to Heather. They watched a video about her. And John, they watched a video about him. I wanted them to tell me the cause of celiac disease and the effect or symptoms of celiac disease. And then for coronary heart disease, the cause and the effect of coronary heart disease. And so I'm just showing Dale now, made it into a family tree so that they could work it out.
It's basically is kind of organized information of this is the key bit, is the thing, the next bit down. It is just, it's a mind map, but structured.
Yeah, and they couldn't do it unless I made them a family tree. I was working with a couple of students last year. One of them was Football Fred, and they couldn't understand the neurons. So I got a great big giant neuron. I got them to shake it. And what they did was they assigned colours to different parts of those neurons and they colour coded those key words. So what we did was we got the CGP book from RNIB Bookshare and then they extracted the information. And then they could see that the cell body contains all the visual cell organelles, including the nucleus and large amounts of rough endoplasmic reticulum. And they would then colour code the rough endoplasmic reticulum in red. And they saw an axon as purple and they saw a dendron as blue. And it was really fascinating because both of these students had synesthesia. They both saw this information in the same colours. And they created these revision cards and then wrote out the information in those colours. And then they remembered it. They remembered it really well. Now, here's one of the girls who had quite good GCSE score, but hasn't done very well this year. And she came to see me and we got one of those giant pieces of wallpaper. Here you go, Dale. She made this massive mind map on wallpaper about biological molecules.
That's a lot of information.
Yeah, well, she said she understood carbohydrates, fats and proteins. And then I went through it with her individually and there was these little chinks in her armour where she didn't quite understand it really clearly. And by doing that, it forced her to go back into her notes, go back through other textbooks and find out what she knew and what she didn't.
And I think there is, I haven't mentioned on the podcast that sometimes at secondary school, you're not really learning a subject, you're learning how to answer exam questions.
Yes,
so there'll be a question on this, I'll learn that, a question on this, but you don't necessarily link it all together and there might be some missing pieces. So that is probably where it's like, right, I need to get it all together and fully understand it to bring it all together to then move on.
And that is the big picture. Dyslexic students love that. And that really helped her. So her next thing was I gave her a chemistry synthetic route pathway for organic compounds. So I actually gave her the one I'm showing Dale now. And she's gone away and I gave her a nice bit of mounting board. She's going to make a massive poster of that. And that's what I did when I did chemistry at university. I had all those organic pathways on my wall. You might have chemistry words and then you've got to link them to something like Anna chopping onions for anion and cat on an ironing board for cation. Did that with Harry. Physics electrical symbols. You might use words and pictures on different revision cards. And the planets. I put the planets in today. And I said to Dale, do you know what, Dale? I can't remember why I bought these ping pong balls. And now I remember. It's because we were going to talk about the planets. There we go. So I was talking about the planets one night with the boys. And, you can use mnemonics for the planets. My very educated mother just served us nachos, please. And you talk about the speed of those planets, okay? And those planets' orbital speed changes depending on how far it is from the sun. The closer the planet is to the sun, the stronger the sun's gravitational pull on it, and the faster the planet moves. And so I'm going back to the rugby, okay, Dale, because I said to them, okay, the fastest planet is close to the sun. So that's Mercury. Who's the fastest? Bruce. And then I said, it could be Pluto's the furthest away. Who would Pluto be? Francis. And so I linked all those planets to all the boys in the rugby team and the speed that they ran. And then they got it. They really got it. And around this table were all these boys, and they were saying who was each planet. And then they remembered it and they got it. Yeah, I thought you'd like that. I'm just going to talk. We're nearly there, Dale. I'm just going to talk about the sociology glossary of terms. One of the students came to me this year, modified papers, and also dyslexic. So this was a girl. I took the textbook, downloaded it into PDF or Word, converted it into size 18 font, found out that she was a green girl. She preferred it as a green background. So she made slide with a green background and put that key information in there. And she put keywords in a color and also pictures. And that really, really helped her. She first came to me, close posture. What's the matter? I can't do it. I don't know what I'm doing. And she didn't understand the language. So we went through it and she got it. Got the green background, got the book, and she was off. Another couple of students, we've been using Widget. A boy used Widget to do a history timeline. It was really good. He then understood what was going on in his history and then was able to write his essays. One girl, again, she did lots of widgets. For example, an Indonesian case study, Bandura and the Bobo doll, or government law creation. But with a formation of a stack in geography, she used Play-Doh. And she loved using Play-Doh. She proudly took a photo of her formation of a stack. And she said to me, she then understood it. She made it on the whiteboard and she understood it then, which was wonderful. Dale, I actually haven't got any more things to talk about today.
That's never going to happen. You're never going to run out of things to say.
but today.
But what I'm going to talk about is people on podcasts are all different.
Yes.
And what Susie basically comes along with a full presentation that we then kind of chat through.
Yeah.
But it's your way of kind of organising what you want to say and getting it all out. And you have your prompts.
Yes.
So, but in theory, I should be telling you to know you can't do this. You've got to do it the same way as everyone else.
Yes.
But that wouldn't work for Susie. So what's wrong with you doing it Susie's way? Absolutely nothing.
Exactly. And that's why it's good to enable those students, to give them those skills, to be able to learn in the way that they understand and is comfortable for them.
And I like the fact that at the beginning you talk about kind of that person-centered approach and blah, 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 and all the blah, blah, blahs around it.
Yes.
Then you're like, right, what did it actually look like? Here are some examples that I've done. Because sometimes I've been to places and go, yeah, they talk about multiple. What does it look like in a geography session? What does it look like in this? And I love the fact you then reinforce this is kind of actually what I've done. So you actually get a concrete example of things you've done that are really highlighting that person-centered approach. And you're talking about the impact.
Yes. So today we've spoken about personalised learning, that person-centred approach, deconstruction that student's brain. And I've given you examples of the person-centred approach for teaching and learning. And I've got this quote here. If you can teach a student a lesson for a day, but if you can teach them to learn by creating curiosity, he will continue the learning process as long as he lives or she lives. And so by teaching that in a way and getting the understanding and putting in those amazing but true facts, which is why I bought that How It Works book, they get so engrossed in it that they'll want to learn more.
They will.
And enjoy their learning.
And interesting, you called the session or the podcast Reconstructing the Student's Brain. We're not changing their brain at all. What we're doing is we are changing their belief in themselves by connecting to them as one human to another and going, right, So how do you learn?
Yes.
Learning from them
Yes.
and then helping them to learn in that way. And that is huge. As you said, so many students who've come to you already believe they can't.
Mm.
You haven't changed their brain. You just accepted the brain as their brain as it is, learned how they work. And even in one lesson, you had a student come in, folded arms, I can't.
Yes.
To that realization of there was just a barrier in your way, which we can remove.
Mm.
And that child now can.
She can. And one of my students this year, I didn't teach her last year, but I was aware of her last year, and I did work with her last year in my workshop. And she said to me, "Thanks for letting me be me." And she said, "I want you to continue to be you, because that's really good. Be yourself and celebrate being different."
Definitely. It's, each person brings their own views, and you learn from someone doing something different. So that person who taught you the plant cells in a shoebox, you went, well, that's different, but I like it. And they'll be different that you don't like, and that's fine. But if everything was the same, it's the whole thing, Einstein's quote about if you judge everyone by being how they can climb a tree, all that.
And they're a fish.
Yeah. And it's just like, we're all different. Let's try different things. Some of us like spicy food. Some of us like pizza. Some of us like every food apart from fish. But it's whatever you like. Yes. That's fine. And we're happy with that. But when it comes to learning, we do all this research about the best ways to learn and do all this. And then we stick to the efficient way that doesn't actually work. So lots to think about. But person-centered approach works for everyone, not just the student. It works for the teacher as well, because they are spending less time fighting, less time being frustrated, less time feeling they're battling 30 children in front of them to actually enjoying spending time with those 30 children because they enjoy spending time with you and getting those learning outcomes, and not only getting them through the exam, but making them lifelong learners.
Yes, that's
that are inspired and will continue learning after they leave your school.
Brilliant. They go to Surrey University, a lot of our students, to study nursing, and they'll be sat in lectures and the lecturer will say something and they look at one another and go, "Susie said that." And then they remember, they'll talk about medication, and then they'll remember medication, 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 that's what you need. I really enjoyed Record Breakers, but I sing that to my class because they'll remember it, won't they?
Yeah, they have no idea what dedication is or who Roy Carson is at all.
No.
But they just, it's this song Susie created out of nowhere.
Yes. And the students, they look at one another and they can just hear me singing it, in class, and it makes them smile.
That's the thing. That inspiration was there. They don't see you anymore.
No.
Might be 3-4 years, might be 20 years. Someone says medication and that song goes off in their head.
Yes.
Susie's in their head still.
Yes, there we go.
Loved recording with you. So thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much, Dale. We still haven't finished the Percy Pig.
No,
we need to just crack those open a bit.
We can finish them.
Yes.
We will. We've done. Are we able to share your presentation?
Yes.
Yes. So the visual presentation, we will put in the show notes. So we'll have a link to that so we can share that so you can all kind of see what Susie's gone through and you see those examples and what those slides look like and that lovely, huge mind map that you've got a photo of. And you'll find all of those in the show notes. As always, wherever you listen to the podcast or on the Zencast website. Thank you for listening to the show. If you haven't subscribed, click on that subscribe button wherever you're listening. Or if you go to the Zencast website, you can subscribe to our newsletter and we'll send an email every time there's a new episode. Please follow us on the social medias, on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and now TikTok as well. We are the Zencast. And if you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics or anything else, please send us a message on social media or send an email to hello@thezencast.com. And if you have the wrong bit there. The Sendcast is created and produced by us here at B Squared. As well as our assessment products and our evidence and parental engagement platforms, we also run online training sessions that we call Sendcast sessions. And if you go to the Sendcast website, you'll now see a range of over 100 training sessions. And these sessions often feature our amazing podcast guests, but are more formal with slides that you can download. We run 9 live sessions every year, which you can join and be part of the Q&A at the end. And we also run free SEND briefings twice a year, so you can keep up to date with what's going on within the world of SEND. You can find out more about our training sessions and our free SEND briefings by going to the Sendcast website. And that is everything. So goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me and Percy.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Sendcast. Bye.